This is Sarah with Posh Pooch Designs, and today's video is going to be super fun. As you can see, I'm back in the kitchen today, and that's because today's project we're going to be combining making a slide and a button with polymer clay and crocheting a band to make a necklace or a bracelet. And here is a bracelet that I made. We make a slide, we make a crochet band, and a button for a clasp. Here's one I did shaped like a butterfly. And this one I did the exact same thing. I just made the band a lot longer. I tied a little knot because I got it too long. And again, the button clasp. So what you're going to need for today's project, now this is a beginner project, so don't panic. It is for beginners, for both beginners learning to use polymer clay and beginners who are just learning to crochet. So what you're going to need is you're going to need some Sculpey or some other kind of polymer clay. This is just my favorite. And you're going to need two small amounts in two different colors. I'm going to be using this bright yellow and this silvery one. Now for our project, if you go to the store, you could just buy two of these in two colors, and you can find this at Hobby Lobby, Walmart, Joann's, and Michael's. And we're just going to be using a fourth of one of these, so you'll have plenty to do lots of good projects. And you're also going to need a few cookie cutters. And you can buy these tiny little cookie cutters at the same places, Hobby Lobby, Michael's, Joann's, and Walmart, and I've also seen them at another store, and all of a sudden I can't remember. It was a bake shop, but any place that sells baking supplies will have these tiny cookie cutters. And don't just look over by the clay. Look in the baking areas, because you can find lots of neat texture and baking things that you can use with polymer clay. So we're going to use this tiny little one for the button. And today we're going to be using this little dog bone one because it's my favorite, but you can use any kind of little cookie cutter for a shape that you want. All right, so that's what you're going to need for supplies for the polymer clay portion. For the crochet portion, to make the band, you're going to need just a tiny bit of worsted weight number 4. You can use Red Heart Super Saver or any of the craft yarns. They work just fine. Just make sure they're a number 4 worsted weight yarn. We're going to be using an H hook today, but for those of you who are beginners, if all you have is say a H, I, or J, those 3 will work just fine. Because this is a great beginner project, don't panic. I will walk you through every step. And the other thing you're going to need is a needle, and you'll need this for sewing on your button and weaving in those ends. All right, so that's what you need for supplies. Now for tools, you're really only going to need a few things. You're going to need something to roll your clay out with. This is a rolling pin in the clay aisle. You can use anything, even a smooth glass or jar, as long as it's nice and clean, to roll out your clay. You're also going to need something to make your little buttonholes in your button, not in your slide piece, but in the button itself. And you just need something to poke 2 little holes. You can use a toothpick, you can use the end of a knitting needle, or anything that has a nice little point that you can put your 2 little holes in it for sewing on to your bracelet. And the other thing you're going to need is a straw. And we're going to use this straw to make the holes. Let me show you this one. In the slide, we use this holes. The straw, I mean, to make those holes. And this is just an example of what you're going to need. The other thing you might want to have is maybe a fun little button to press in. And as you can see on this one, I used this little button just to press that in before I baked it to make a little paw print on there. And this one here, I did some little hearts. So you can do whatever you want if you want to. If you don't want to, you don't have to. It's totally up to you. But that's just a little something extra. And then the last thing that you might want to have on hand is Sally Hansen Hard as Nails Clear Nail Polish. Now I've had a lot of questions about using nail polish on polymer clay. If you use some of the really cheap brands like the 99-cent stuff, it might get sticky. I have never ever had any of mine ever get sticky. I've been doing this for about 10 years, 9.5, 10 years. And I have never ever had any of mine get sticky. But I always buy the Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails in clear, and she also has some sparkles. And it holds up really well. And I think it has to do with what the nail polish is made out of. And you don't have to use nail polish if you don't want them shiny. If you want it just to have a matte finish, like this one has just a matte finish, where this one has the shiny finish. You can see the shine on there. So that's another thing that you can get if you want to. Now, this is a really fun beginner project, like I said, and it's also a great project to help keep those kids and teenagers busy for spring break. Although it's gorgeous here, it's going to be a gorgeous spring break here in Colorado. All right, so take a few minutes, gather up all your supplies, and we'll go ahead and get started. But before we do, I have one more thing that you're going to need, and that is an oven. Now you can use your big oven or you can use your small oven. And since I'm just doing a couple of pieces today, I'm going to use my small oven. So before you get started, go ahead and preheat your oven to 275 degrees. And that will get your oven all ready and preheated for when we bake our clay items. Oh, and I almost forgot to tell you, you need parchment paper, because we're going to line our pan with parchment paper to bake it, and we're also going to use it as a work surface. So set your oven to 275 degrees and grab that parchment paper too while you're collecting your supplies. We're going to begin with the polymer clay, and we're going to make one slide and a button for our bracelet. Now you can do as many as you want to, and we're just going to do this for the demonstration. The first thing that you need to do is wash your hands with a mild soap, rinse real good, and dry your hands real good, because you don't want anything that you touched, or even like lotions or perfumes, to be on your hands when you're working with the clay. You don't want that residue. The next thing you need to do is cut a piece of parchment paper for your pan and line your pan. And then we'll set that aside to use when we're ready. And then the last thing you need is to cover your work surface so you don't get any of the polymer clay residue on your counter. I'm going to pull my sleeves up and we're going to get started. So I've got my tools here, and the first thing you need to do, like I said, is pick out 2 colors of clay and just begin kneading that clay until it's really, really soft. And I'm going to say 2 or 3 minutes until it's really pliable and soft with both your colors. And I've been kneading these for a little bit, so mine are just about ready. And then once they're nice and soft, we're going to roll those out. I call them snakes, but people who've been doing polymer clay a long time, they call them canes. And we're just going to roll them out real long. Now, because we're going to be mixing the colors together, or joining them together, not mixing, we don't have to have a nice smooth cane. It's actually almost better if you don't, so that the colors are uneven. So let's move that one up there. Now we're going to do the silver one. And I chose this silver one because it has sparkles in it, and that way I don't have to put the gloss on it if I don't want to. All right, so I've got a couple of canes here. Here's my silver one and my yellow one. And we're going to put those together, and then we're going to start twisting like this. Bend it in half, twist it some more, and just start squishing it together. Now the goal here is not to combine colors, but rather to mix it up so it almost has like some of the camo looks when you buy a camo shirt or something, so that you can see both colors in there. Then we're going to set that down and we're going to roll that out. And you can roll it out and keep mixing until you get the color look that you want. The more you mix it, the more mixed the colors will be. But I want mine to be kind of spread out. There we go. Now as far as how thick, I do it about 1/12 of an inch, but I don't measure, I just eyeball. But if you want to be exact, you certainly can. Okay, so there is my piece. I'm going to look on both sides. This one has lots of silver and yellow, and this side does too. And I think I like the way this side is swirling a little better. So I'm going to grab my cookie cutter. I want to make sure I get silver and yellow in there, so I'm going to put it over there. And I usually make 2 of each. And I do that because that way once they're baked up, I can see which one I like better. And then I've got extras if I want to make a bracelet and a necklace. So there's my 2 little dog bones. And then I'm going to use my round one to make a couple of buttons. Let me turn it over. I'm going to make sure I get silver and yellow on my button. Push that out. All right. Now I'll set this aside. Now don't throw this away. You can wad this back up, knead it again, and make more buttons out of it. And I'm going to set it aside because I'm done with it for right now. So what we need to do first, let's do our tiny buttons. So we're just going to take a pointed tool and make 2 button holes right in the center. Make sure you go straight down. And then I always take it and turn it over and just sort of press in just a little. It has to be big enough for yarn to pass through those holes. And I'll set that on my tray. And like I said, I always do 2. Never hurts to have extra buttons anyway when you're making them. Okay, that one's a little bit off, so let's try to round that out a little better. There we go. All right, there's my second button. Now we're going to make the slides. And the way we do that is we take the end of our straw and we eyeball it, try to get it center, and we go straight down and just twirl that straw and it pulls out. And we do it again. We'll do this one. See, that one's a little over, so I'll probably use this one. And the thing is, if you mess up, before you bake it, you can always do another one because, there we go. For instance, I don't like the way that one looks, so I'm just going to put it back in with the mixture. Just like that. And then I can make some more. Okay, so we've got these on our pan. But we're going to be wearing this on our arm. And so what I do is I put it on my finger and I sort of bend it just a little so that when I wear it, it's going to fit on my arm and not be too flat, I guess the way it is. You can bend it a little this way and a little bit this way, and then just set it down. You can see it has kind of an arch in it. And now this is ready to go in the oven. Now I've already preheated my oven to 275, and I'm going to bake this for about 15 minutes. So I'm going to go put it in the oven, and like I said, bake them for about 15 minutes. So while our slide and our buttons are baking, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to make the bracelet portion. And the way we do that, we're going to begin with the slip knot. And you take the yarn and you wrap it around your finger and just twist your finger. Then you take this other end, not the tail, but the other end, and you just make a loop and poke it through and pull that loop. And that snugs that right down for the beginning of your chaining. To chain, you've got your loop on your hook. All you're going to do is wrap around that hook, and I hold it right there and just pull that through. And for the bracelet, I'm going to be chaining 24 chains plus an additional 5 chains. to make a bracelet that fits your arm or whatever, a neck or whatever you're going to make, you need to chain 3 chains per inch. I am making an 8-inch bracelet. So 3 times 8 is 24. And then we need to chain an additional 5, which would be 29, because we're going to use those last 5 to make a loop. And I'll show you that when we get there. So I've chained 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 20 chains, and I need to do 9 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So now I have 29 chains. We're going to turn and go in the 5th chain from the hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so we're going to take our hook and we're going to go in that 5th chain, that loop. We're going to yarn over and pull that loop through. You'll have 2 loops on your hook, and you're going to pull that loop through the other loop. And what that did is that gave us this little hole so that we can button our button through and hold it for a clasp. So what we're going to do next is we're going to slip stitch down the side of our chain. And the way we slip stitch is we go in the top of the chain, pull a loop through, then pull that loop through the loop that was on our hook. And we'll do this all the way down our chain. Go in the top of the chain, pull a loop through, then pull that loop through the loop on your hook. And we'll do this all the way down the chain. See how it's starting to look like a braid? And then we have that loop on the end. So continue down. These are called slip stitches because you're putting your hook through, pulling a loop in, and then slipping that loop through the back loop that's already on the hook. And we'll do this all the way down till we get to the last chain. I have slip stitched down my bracelet all the way to the last chain, and now I'm going to cut my yarn. And see, we have plenty of yarn left to make many more if we want to. So the way we tie off is you wrap that tail over your hook and just pull it right through and snug that down. Now here's your bracelet. You've got 2 ties. One tie we're going to use to add our button, and the other tie we're going to use just to tie in. So I'm going to take this one. It doesn't matter which one. I'm going to thread it on my needle. And the way you weave your ends in as you go back through, there we go, and just make a few stitches going through. And the key to tying off well is to go through stitches, not the holes in between the stitches. And we went one way, my needle unthreaded, let me thread it again, and then you turn and go back the other way. And that's going to keep your yarn from coming out. And also, you won't have to tie a knot and have a knot on the back of your project. And we're going to use this second tail for tying on, sewing on, not tying on, sewing on our button. The timer went off and our buttons are ready, but they must cool. And it has been my practice to allow your pieces of polymer clay to rest for 24 hours. A lot of people say 8, and that's fine, but I want mine to sit and rest for 24 hours before I use them on anything, before I add any gloss or anything. But I'm going to use these other ones that I have ready to show you how to finish your bracelet. And we're going to use this butterfly and this button that I already made to show you how to finish your bracelet. So what we're going to do is we're going to thread that piece of yarn on. And at this point, if you want to gloss your slide and your button, go ahead and grab your Sally Hansen's clear hard as nails and polish just the top, and then let them dry really good before you put them on here. I always let them sit about an hour once I gloss them. But that's part of the reason I chose the silver sparkly one, is so I wouldn't have to do that. Okay, so we're going to put the slide on first. And the way we do that is we are going to go down in the first hole, and you're going to gently pull that bracelet through, and then we're going to come out the second hole and gently pull that through, and that way it sits like this. And then the next thing we're going to do is sew our button on. And so we've got the end of our yarn, we're still got our needle on, we're going to go up through the hole, we're going to set it right on the end like that, and we're going to stitch in and out, making sure we go through the bracelet a couple of times. Now, if you're working with younger kids, you may want to do this portion because you do need to make sure your needle is a little bit sharp, not great big sharp, you know, pointy bad, but just so that the kids don't get hurt, you can sew this portion on yourself. And I usually do 3 or 4, making sure it's on there nice and tight. And this happens often. You got to rethread your needle. All right, so once it's on there nice and snug, I just turn it over and I just make a few stitches on the back like this. So it's not going to go anywhere. Make one more good stitch. Give it a good hard pull. And because I put a button on there, I am going to make a little knot. And that's, most of the time in crochet, we don't really add knots because they come undone sometimes, or they make a bump in the yarn. But I'm going to add a knot because I don't want my button to come off. All right, so I've cut my yarn, set those aside, and here's my bracelet. We can turn it, and we have this loop on the end, and you just ease that button through that loop, and it will be a little snug, but you want it to be snug so it doesn't come off your arm. And I always button it before I put it on. There we go, and there's our bracelet.